Okay, before we move any further into our exploration of ethical libertarianism, I want to make sure we distinguish it from another theory of libertarianism you may be familiar with. If you took Introduction to Philosophy, Philosophy 10, then you likely encountered the theory of metaphysical libertarianism. Metaphysical libertarianism is not ethical libertarianism. Instead, metaphysical libertarianism is the theory that determinism is false. Okay? What's determinism, you ask? Determinism is the theory that every single event that occurs, every single one without exception, are events that are caused to occur. And the nature of the causes of all of the events that occur are physical and therefore subject to the physical laws of the nature, physical laws of nature, things like gravity and so forth. So, for example, when you see a tree fall in your backyard, you don't look at that fallen tree and think, that's weird. That tree fell for no reason at all. You know there's reasons why that tree fell. You might not know what the reasons are, but you know it didn't fall for no reason. You know that maybe the ground was overly saturated. Maybe the tree was suffering from an insect infestation, or it was rotted, or strong winds were blowing, or some combination of those things and any other kinds of physical causes you can think of. And you know that those are the reasons that the tree fell. The tree wouldn't have fell in the way that it did were it not for the physical circumstances involving the tree existing exactly as they existed at the moment that the tree fell. And that's a really important point for determinists. The tree fell as it did because that's the only way it could have fallen given the way that the totality of physical circumstances were at the moment the tree fell. For the tree to have fallen differently, for it to have fallen faster, or it to have fallen in a different location, something would have had to have been different in the physical circumstances involving that tree at the moment it fell. It was determined to fall exactly as it did by the totality of physical circumstances that existed at the moment of its falling. Okay, so now metaphysical libertarians are going to extend this rejection of this kind of determinism to you. And they're going to say, look, you make decisions in your life, and those decisions are not caused by physical circumstances. You exist in a physical environment, in a physical body. You have biological states. You have psychological states. You have a brain. You have an environment that you exist in. You have parents. You have a height, a sex, an IQ. You have all kinds of things that are associated with your physical self. And all of those things that are associated with your physical self are subject to the physical laws of the universe. I can't just choose to fly off the ground. My body is constrained by gravity, right? And so what metaphysical libertarians are going to say is that those facts in your life, they may influence how you think. They may influence decisions that you make. But ultimately, you have the ability to make some decisions freely in your life, says the metaphysical libertarian. You have free will, or what they would call agency. Your decisions that you make, the actions that you take, they are not caused by the physical circumstances of your life in the same way that the tree falling is caused by those physical circumstances. Instead, they're caused by you making a deliberate selection from among the options that are available. And as a consequence of that, says the metaphysical libertarian, you bear the burden of moral responsibility. In other words, we can praise you and blame you for the actions that you take because these are actions that you chose to take. Okay? Now, ethical libertarianism is going to assume that metaphysical libertarianism is true, and therefore going to claim that the decisions that you make are yours to bear responsibility for. And because you're bearing the responsibility for these decisions, what matters the most is you to be free when you're making these decisions. Freedom matters most. Bodily autonomy matters most. Self-ownership matters most. These things matter most because these are the conditions for you to be able to bear that moral responsibility for your choices in a morally justifiable manner. Now, we can break down ethical libertarianism in sort of two strains. One is utilitarian libertarianism. Okay? Utilitarian libertarianism brings that idea that what matters most is the greatest good for the greatest number, and it combines it up with this valuing of bodily autonomy and self-ownership of libertarianism. And it says that we're going to most effectively and efficiently get to the greatest good for the greatest number if we respect self-autonomy, bodily ownership, and individual freedom. If we embrace those values, we'll get to the greatest good for the greatest number. And in contrast to that is the principled libertarian. And the principled libertarian says, I don't embrace libertarianism because I think it gets me to a place I want to be for the society as a whole. The greatest good is great for the greatest number. I embrace this, the value of freedom and self-ownership and bodily autonomy because I think that to not prize those things the most is degrading to human beings as the things that they are. And they would point to something like slavery. And they would say, think about slavery. Slavery is the absence of freedom. Individual freedom. It's the absence of individual autonomy. It's the absence of bodily ownership. And because of that, slavery is a dehumanizing institution, right? That's how we describe slavery. It dehumanizes people. It degrades them. It takes some of their dignity away. It takes some of their humanness away. And the way that it does that is by claiming that people other than the individuals themselves can own other people. It claims that some people don't have the right to be free, that some people don't own their bodies and don't have bodily autonomy. And therefore the principled ethical libertarian says, that's why I value self-ownership, bodily autonomy, and freedom the most, because it's essential in order to uphold the dignity of the human being.